When we talk about human error, I think human error, we always think about the seafarer on board a vessel, and we hear this data which says 80% of the incidents happen because of human error. But we have a slight twist to that. Human error happens on board the vessels, but it also happens in the office. Why? Because in the office, we make our analysis on what the seafarers need to address. That's the starting. And when the seafarers work day to day, they are exposed to their own set of human errors. So my presentation has two parts to it. I'll talk about the first part as how we address the human error at the office, and then how we're going to start addressing the human error on the ships. So as a baby, the first few words we learn is, mama, papa, mom, dad, etc., etc. But as a cadet, when we join a ship, the first few words we learn is we are a reactive industry. We talk about 2050 being far, with nearly 30 years at sea now, or in this industry. It seems like yesterday, but it wasn't. We're still saying the same thing. Nothing has changed. We're still a reactive industry. So when we present ourselves to any company, we start with a very basic question. How do you prioritize your safety focus area? And the answer is simple. We look at our internal data. So this is on your left side. We look at our internal data. We respond to frequency of events. Mind you, frequency does not equal risk. Just because you've had something 10 times in comparison to something that has happened twice, it doesn't mean that the 10 is more risky. We all know it, but how many of us actually follow it? Which makes it reactive. But at HiLo, this is not a sales pitch, but I have to do it in order to explain where I'm coming from. If you were to get the data across all the companies, and this is, when I say data, this is the internal data, the gold dust, on which the companies do their analysis, you can then make it much more proactive. But again, when you make it proactive, what are you going to do? Go back to the good old trend analysis, etc. But again, that doesn't really help. So what you need is a predictive model. A little bit of a history. While we've been having all these incidents at sea, and sailors are pretty creative in having these incidents, I must say, all the operational industries having similar kind of events. And these predictive models have been created over a period of time. And what are these predictive models? It's basically nothing but an algorithm which takes away the human element of making a decision. So nuclear industry started in the 60s, aviation in 70s. In the middle, you've got the hospitals, the defense forces, geomagnetics, the list is endless. 2000, you had the rail industry. 2012 was police. It's quite interesting. And when we started HiLo in 2016, we realized there was nothing like this in the shipping industry. I won't go into the details how this predictive model works, and if you want to go on our website, it has a very simple, it's not again a sales tool, it's a simple process which will explain to you what the process is of this predictive modeling. But I'll pick up on something very interesting. We were talking about, on your deficiencies, we were talking about days during the day, the way, or during the week, how it changes, the deficiencies. In the US, they realized that the judges, in a day's time, all the verdicts that were given in the morning were averagely quite well thought over. By lunch, the verdicts were very harsh because they were hungry. Post-lunch, they were very weak because they were lethargic. By evening, they were the best because they wanted to go home. So what did they do? They created a predictive model, which is nothing taking 100 judges into the room, trying to understand how they actually make an assessment of making a verdict, putting it in an algorithm, which is on the same principle that I'm talking about, and voila, you have a model. So if you're interested, read a book called Hello World, not written by me. I'm not selling that book. But if you're really interested, read the book. It'll give you a good idea that how these models have been there since time immemorial, but then many industries don't use it. So quickly running through this. So in HiLo, what we are right now doing in order to eradicate the human error within the office, we get all that internal data from shipping companies. So we have about 50-odd companies. So shipping companies are willing to share this data. We run it through this platform, secured platform. We run it through our predictive model, and we're able to give a risk profile to shipping companies, one anonymized risk profile for the entire fleet, and one at a company level. Now, I'll go back to the point of how you're avoiding the human error on a company level. People will say, you know what, shipping companies don't want to share their data. Well, that's not correct. We analyzed ourselves against some of the best databases, actually the best database. I won't mention it because of antitrust issues. But we compared ourselves with them. We have 5 times more data when it comes to collisions, 3 times more on grounding. And mind you, we have just about 10% of the world's fleet actually reporting into our system. In 2018, we were able to reduce the risk of lifeboat incidents within our subscriber fleet by 72%. The risk of engine room fire by 65% and bunker spills by 25%. Very simple actions were shared. And why I'm saying they are simple actions is, if I go back to the case of the lifeboat, right? Between the subscriber base, they realized at that time one of the challenges they were having was the lifeboat incidents were happening just after the lifeboat inspections. You know, the annual inspections. A deep dive into it, we realized that you have some flag states where you need a full-blown engineer to come and do your inspection. There are some flag states where the requirement is so poor that my grandmother can come and do your lifeboat inspection. So all they did was they actually just went and looked back at their, the service providers that were coming and doing their inspections. Fast forward, end of 2018, whenever we would present ourselves, everybody would say, thumbs up, great job. What are you doing with human error? For the first few months, we used to always give a standard answer. Our leading indicators, the data that we collect, a lot of them have human error involvement, and this is just a few examples. So, failure of bridge team management, confined space non-compliance, they have just the human error behind them. We were just defending ourselves because we were talking about human error in the office. So suddenly we realized we should turn the question around. So we asked the companies, what data do you collect on human error? Any guesses what the answer was? None. We don't have Harry Potter's magic wand that we can do, or anybody can do an analysis if nobody's collecting data on it. When we talk about human error in our offices and our ships, we take one incident, we work backwards, we look at the one element that went wrong, which rightfully it'll be a procedure most probably, or it'll be to do with training, and we go back to within the company and we change the procedures. But we sit on wealth of data. So what we did was, over Q1 and Q2 this year, we partnered with 5 of our subscribers, and we developed a human error model where we have identified about 40 data points, which are quantitative data points, that is in the shipping companies. Now what that will do is it will enhance the information that we have in order to provide levers to companies to eradicate the risk. The challenge for us is going to be collecting those data points. So if I go back to the previous one, when we were talking about the data that is coming from the companies, all companies have a safety management system too. So it's very easy to collect that data. When you come back to human element on ships, or human error on ships, there is no database. So we are now on a change management journey, working with our 5 companies and a few more who would be willing to join, to actually run these models for the next 1 year and hopefully incorporate it into our existing model. So what will it look like? What the outcome will look like? So for our current subscribers, they have a risk level based on different ship types. Mind you, we catered for, because we realized that a ship is a ship, so we have a similar model for tankers, bulk carriers, containers, etc. So what we will then be able to help them is saying, okay, you have the leading indicators risk, which is probably the ones which you're doing in your office, and then you have a human error risk. Look at the levers that you want to maneuver and reduce your risk. And if it is a company which is not part of the HiLo subscriber, they will be able to get a risk dashboard. So using some psychologists and some really statistic nerds, we came up with a baseline which is based on the aviation and the rail industry experts. We're learning from them. And with that baseline, any company will be able to know whether they're above or below it, and which factor is above or below that baseline. And the model has gone through a peer review to 3 of the top universities, Strathclyde, Cranfield, and Loughborough. And every one of them is an expert in marine, aviation, and rail industry human experts. I made it in time. Thank you.